Explain this conversion to the IP. I mean, for years you've argued in defense of the governor's no new taxes.
No, I didn't. No, you will never find that I have ever said no new taxes is the right way to go. What I have said is that in the first 2 years of Governor Pawlenty's term, that I do believe and still believe that the right approach was to come in and to say, for this shortfall, we're going to fix it through spending cuts alone in 2003 and 2004. But then he needed to make the transition to reform, and that hasn't happened. When he was a candidate, I opposed the pledge for no new taxes. I have worked the one tax that passed, the 2005 health impact fee, otherwise known as a tobacco tax increase. I created the strategy for it. I worked with a number of partners to engage Minnesotans in supporting that tax. And we are in this position because of the willful misspending and mismanagement of the leaders we have charged with governing our state. We are governed by those who argue over who's right rather than what's right. We have a budget created by politicians who are driven by narrow interests, starting with their own re-elections or their own quest for higher office. And with all due respect, Representative Emmer, it is not assigning blame to say that the Republicans have dropped the ball for the last 8 years. It is holding the party accountable. And so, Representative Emmer, look at Governor Pawlenty. 6 months ago, he was saying, here's a budget. We're going to make it dependent on the feds giving us $263 million, and that'll balance the budget without any pain. The money comes this week, and now Governor Pawlenty says, oh, don't need it, don't want it. That's politics. That's not good policy. Of course we ought to accept that money. Of course we ought to be putting the money into the budget, as it is in my budget, to spend the $140 million that is required to expand health care through the early opt-in Medicaid. Of course we ought to be doing that.
Horner?
Well, look, a couple of things. I mean, first of all, the big chunk of the money, $260 million, was money that Governor Pawlenty and the Republicans in the legislature had in their budget in January to say this is how we're going to balance the state budget. Apparently there were no strings attached then. I don't know how 8-9 months later, all of a sudden, it becomes money that has baggage tied to it. But secondly, look, I mean, should we be taking federal money in order to reform health care in Minnesota, in order to make sure that we can create a lower cost, higher quality health care system? Absolutely. And that starts with providing coverage to more Minnesotans. So let me tell you what this really is, because there have been some complicated issues that have bounced around in this campaign. One of them is nullification, the ability of states like Minnesota, in Representative Emmer's view, to be an island unto itself. This really is the face of nullification. I mean, this is what you get with nullification is, I don't want to be part of the federal government, we're going to turn down federal money, and we're going to turn down the federal opportunity to create a better health care system in Minnesota. Well, and fair enough, and whenever a politician says new funding, you ought to be wary. So let me explain what it is. And let me start with the $6.5 million that has increased in state government spending, largely during the years in which a Republican was in control, and many of those years in which Representative Emmer was in the House of Representatives.